Hey everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here for our music masterclass. So as we've been doing the last few weeks, we're going to be kind of focusing on the techniques that we're covering in the Jazz Piano Holiday course, which if you haven't enrolled for, we're pretty deep into it. I won't say it's too late, but yeah, maybe we'll catch you next time. But the stuff we're going to talk about today, I think anyone can find useful. You don't have to be enrolled in the course. So I am checking my sound, and so far so good here. So a couple of administrative notes here. So yesterday during the MuseScore Cafe, of course, we had more technical glitches, and so I mentioned that I'm looking at some alternative solutions for some things, and one of them we're going to try later today. So before we finish up, I'm going to try moving us to another platform. We're just basically going to stop this, and then I'm going to tell you what to do to check out this other thing. That's sort of a new and interesting possibility. So there's a little teaser for you. Okay, so the particular topic that I want to focus on today, and do it, of course, in the context of looking at some of your music, has to do with this idea that we can break music into phrases, but when we do that, we want to do it in ways that feel natural. And that somehow when we identify where we can put our one chords, our twos, and our fives to create the basic structure of our tune, that there's places where it sort of makes sense, and places where even if individually the chord seems like it fits that note, there's something about the phrasing that maybe would suggest a different place of doing it. I already just trying to explain it, it's hard to explain what I mean. So I'm going to do so using, real examples. And I'm going to start with my version of Jingle Bells here. So, glad you're having fun there, Colleen. Cool. And yes, glad to see people checking in. And so this is cool. Yeah, good to see everyone's comments here. So I want to look at this, what I've got right here. This is as far as many of you have come thus far. You've got your melody, you've got your basic chords, and then you're filling in these chorale voicings. And now maybe you're about to start working on some of these other reharmonization techniques. And so let me play through just those first 8 bars. All right, so that's what I have. Actually, I'm going to turn MuseScore's volume up so that when I play it, it's a little better. Thanks on the black comment, and actually my wife tells me the same, which is why I go out of my way to wear it as much as I can on these things. So, so what's going on here is you see that, first of all, I have laid this thing out with 4 measures per system, right? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next system is 1, 2, 3, 4. And I had to slow down and measure 3 because I can't play while I'm looking sideways. At least I can't play notated music. I can improvise. I improvise with my eyes closed all the time. The point here is that a lot of music really does naturally lay out in 4-bar phrases. So not all songs do, and a couple of you are working on songs that already have some issues here. Lojo Rose Air Blooming really is not very metrical at all. I mean, it predates the invention of the bar line. I don't know if that's literally true, but might as well be true, right? So it sort of resists attempts to coerce it into 4-bar phrases, and yet it doesn't. It will work. It just requires you to maybe make a little more effort. It just doesn't happen naturally. The other song Someone else was doing a Renaissance song that I wasn't familiar with that had the same issue. Another one, though, is Bring a Torch, Jeanette, Isabella. It's another holiday song that it at least has clear measures, but it's got 5-bar phrases in it instead of 4-bar phrases. I think the first couple phrases are 4 bars and the next couple are 5. So the first thing that I guess I would ask is, well, this is a rhetorical ask, how do you know if your song has 4-bar phrases or something else? So I actually am going to ask a non-rhetorical question here. This is one for the chat. How many people feel like you know for sure my song fits? So here are your choices. Either my song is clearly 4-bar phrases, or my song is clearly not 4-bar phrases, or I'm not sure. Right? I'd love to see people check in the chat, those of you who are actually working on doing this. And then we're going to take a look at some of the specific pieces. So, I'm from the things that I have seen, a lot of people's songs do fit 4-bar phrases, but some people aren't necessarily as aware of this as they could be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load a couple of these pieces that I'll get Sora's in there too because it is interesting. Sora has a original composition as opposed to a traditional one that she's working on, and so there it's harder for me to talk about whether it has 4-bar phrases or not. It has whatever she wants it to have. Definitely 4, definitely 4, definitely 4. Yeah, so good. A lot of pieces will be, and so a lot of you have already set up this way. So just to jump through some of these pieces here. So like this one, okay, so this one, Miriam, I don't know if you're listening now. This is a song that, okay, it says Angels Jazz, and listen to the beginning of it, and you all tell me if you know the same thing. I wish I could play looking sideways. So, I played a wrong note in there, but it didn't change anything. I looked at that, and I saw the title, and I heard this. And this. And thought this was Angels We Have Heard on High, right? Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing. And then I'm looking for o'er the plains, but that's not what she's got. She's got that. And I was like, well, you've got some wrong notes in there. But it turns out this is an entirely different song, and half of you knew that already, right? It's a song that I've never heard before called Angels from the Realm of Glory, and I take it it's common in some other cultures other than maybe my culture of growing up in Catholic Church in the United States. I don't know. So it's not part of my realm of experience. But also on top of that, there's like entirely different melodies that this lyric, Angels from the Realm of Glory, I guess is the lyric. There's entirely different melodies that has been set to. And that's true of a couple pieces. Like I haven't heard anyone do Away in a Manger, but that's one that has at least 3 different melodies. The one I know is Away in a manger, no crib for a bed. And other people know the one that I know is Flow Gently, Sweet Afton. Away in a manger, no crib for a bed. And people in Australia know a different melody still that I had never heard before, but until last year. So, yeah, this was a different melody to this song than some people know. So some people know this song, but they know it with an entirely different melody. This is a version of it that's essentially the same as Angels We Have Heard on High, except indeed these last 3 notes are not. And other than that, it's essentially the same thing, because check out this. Right? Isn't that glorious? me, basically, right? So I thought it was that song, but that wasn't what she was going for, and that was cool. So I got to learn a new thing here, and I've been learning a bunch of new songs as a result of this. So this one lays out really nicely in 4-bar phrases. In the bleak winter, midwinter. This one also lays in 4-bar phrases. This one has already been reharmonized some. He's a little further ahead than some people are. Let me play a little of this one. Yeah, so nice. He's done some really nice things. He's working on the tonicization techniques here, and I think I can't remember if this version he had already started. Brian, if you're watching, you can let me know if you had already started working on the cadences also or not. But mostly this is about the tonicization section. So this lays out really nicely into 4-bar phrases. And the thing is, if I say that, and everyone so far has been chiming in, yeah, that works for mine. If anyone struggles with that who's watching this and hasn't chimed in or is watching it later, the easiest way to know how your song breaks down is to write out the lyrics and think about where you would write the lines. Like, jingle bells, jingle all the way. And then I would skip to the next line. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. And then the next line. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Is it really the same lyric twice? I've never just recited it to realize that. But maybe I messed up. But in any case, there's a sort of a natural place where you might move to the next line in writing it, kind of like poetry. That's your phrases in a nutshell. Also, you can often tell it by the repetition of the melody. We have, I'm going to try to straighten out this, undo the syncopations. Then, right? So it's that same melody, and then the same. It's basically a 4-measure melody, and then that same melody starts again. So there's another way to sort of get a sense of how your piece breaks down into phrases, is where the melody actually repeats. And typically, most of these songs will have some repetition in their melody. So what I want to talk about here is how the 2/5s kind of lay in with this. And by the way, I actually want to look at one other thing here. I want to look at Lojo Rose, and I want to look at Sora's piece. I'm going to look at Sora's piece first. So this is original, and I'm just going to play the beginning. So that's 2 bars, 3, 4, and now here, start of the next phrase, right? It's the same melody, more or less. And then 3, 4. Now here's the next phrase starting. Except, maybe this feels like a pickup in this. So it feels like probably this is the next phrase starting here for the winter. And so what it really means is you took 5 bars to get there, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4 for the first phrase very clearly, because the lay your hands, you even started with a capital, you've got a comma after life, a capital letter on lay, and the first 3 notes are the same. So, you got a 2-bar phrase, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. Well, if you wanted to, and I know you said you could probably make it 4, well, specifically, who needs 2 bars of side, right? It could just be, rest with your children at your side. So all I did was compressed these 2 measures into one by playing that C as a half note and then that F as a half note, and brought in the C pickups on beat 4 of that same measure. So if you want to kind of force it into a 4-bar phrase, often that's all it takes, is finding places where there's actually a little too much time, not too much time, but more time than we need if we want 4-bar phrases, and compress that. There's definitely songs where I have done that, like songs that when you do them normally, they've got a couple extra beats, but when we throw them into a jazz context, I figure out how to remove some beats or add some beats to pad it into 4-bar phrases. So yeah, so I assume that's kind of what you're looking at, but I wanted to show that for other people's benefit. So here's Lojo Rose Air Blooming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there's the next phrase. So as it is in this version, it is a 6-bar phrase. So we could use the same trick I just used on Sora's piece to combine these last two measures, right? And make it be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, and so I could combine these two measures into one. But that's out of the frying pan into the fire. Now I've got a 5-bar phrase instead of 6. I think I'd actually be happier with the 6. So some of the things that I talk about will be a little awkward to apply to this song, but a lot of things will still work. So what we will want to do is figure out where we're going to try to get our 2s in there. Because often when I had people start off by ear, just filling in 1s, 4s, and 5s, then I gave you a couple of rules for figuring out how to get your 2s in there. And I realized kind of later, well, I know for a fact, I've experienced this before, it's hard to convey what I'm talking about. I mentioned that at the beginning. The things that I'm about to be talking about, how to know when it feels right, are kind of hard to be concrete about. But I'm going to try my best here, and you all can maybe ask some questions and help me through the process. Okay, Peter, I see your question here. I'll get to that in a second. So by all means, yeah, keep asking questions, and then it'll help me kind of see what's not clear. So Peter's question is a good one here, because he's asking about 2-bar phrases. So this is a point that I want to make. When I say 4-bar phrases, I don't necessarily mean exactly 4. I mean a power of 2. So I'm going to show you something here. What am I going to show you? I'm going to show you, I will use chord symbols here. This version is C for 2 beats, and then D minor 7, G7, back to C. Now I'm going to show you a version that is C for a whole measure, and then 2 beats each of D minor 7 and G7, and then C. And now I'm going to show you a version that is 2 measures of C, a measure of D minor 7, and a measure of G7. And again, back to C. So, what I'm going to claim is that at some level, these phrases are all the same. Think of these as totally distinct things. This isn't like one song that's just moving forward. This phrase right here is essentially the same as this phrase. Which is essentially the same as this phrase. And when I say essentially the same, I mean literally if I just stick in tempo markings and call this one 60 beats a minute, and call this one 120 beats a minute, and call this one 240 beats a minute, they're going to literally sound the same, right? And now here's the 120 beats a minute. And here's the 240. So I'm not saying that it's all about tempo, but my point is, when I talk about 4-bar phrases, there's nothing magic about the number 4. It's really about the ratios of the chord lengths. In other words, this type of phrase, a song that starts with 1 and then eventually comes back to 1 at some particular interval, either one bar later, like in this version, the first version where I have a C chord for just 2 beats and then 1 beat each, right? That version, it came back to C after 1 measure. This version, I've doubled the tempo, so it sounds the same, but this one comes back to C after 2 measures. And this version comes back to the C after 4 measures. I could double it again and have it not take 8 measures to get back there, but yeah, usually any song that we would look at in terms of 8 measure phrases, we would break it down into 4 and 4. So the point is, I did this with tempo, but I could just as easily have done it with note values, right? Like this might be a melody, the first version here might be a melody that's a half note, and then quarter notes, bum, bum, and then 7, so like this. And the next version might be basically that same melody, but with the note values doubled. Right? So this is really the same thing. So often the same song can be written either with like kind of halved note values where the basic rhythmic unit is the quarter note, or the basic rhythmic unit might be the half note, or it might be the eighth note, and that's going to affect our phrase length, but it's still basically 4-bar phrases. They just might have been compressed to look like 2 or look like 1, but it's still going to have the same ratio here, where it's basically the 2. I've got a 1 chord here, 1, and then 2, 5, 1. So the 1 chord took the same amount of time as the 2 and the 5. This is where the power of 2 business comes from, because we've got a 1 chord. Let me hold my hands this way so I think it reads left to right for you. My 1 chord, then my 2 and the 5, taking the same amount of time. Now, not all songs literally start on the 1, then have a 2, 5, and then come back to 1, but a lot of songs do. So it's this structure that I'm looking for. I'm looking to see how this kind of structure fits a song. So if I look at Jingle Bells is a little like... So right here I can see, well, 4 bars later, it's not coming back to F, it's coming to G, but it does come back to F after 2 bars. So maybe I won't repeat chord symbols like this, but from the perspective of trying to understand the phrase structure, I might just put that chord in there. So now I can see I have a 2-bar phrase, and then another 2-bar phrase. And then I can see that all these are 2-bar phrases. This phrase is 2, 5, and that's a single phrase. And then this guy right here is a 2-bar phrase in which the 2, 5 are, this is that same one that I was just looking at, but reversed, right? I was dealing with a measure of 1 and then 2, 5 together. This is that reverse. It's the 2, 5 and then the 1, but still in that same ratio. So here I have a 2-bar phrase that's a 2, 5 that never goes back to 1, but it sort of sits there in the right ratio. The 2 and the 5 are the same length. And then here I have a 2-bar phrase that's really but it's generally speaking always going to be these powers of 2. And we want to be working it at whichever zoom level allows us to see this structure of basically journeying back and forth between 1 and 2. So this one, if I break it into 2-bar phrases, I have a 1 chord. 2 bars later, I've got another 1 chord. 2 bars later, I've got a 2 chord. 2 bars later, I've got another 2 chord. And then at this level, I zoom in a little more to say, yeah, but this 2 chord comes back to 1 after only 1 measure. So here I look at it as 2 little 1-bar phrases. This way, I can map out this whole piece in terms of here's 1, 2 bars later is 1, 2 bars later is 2, 2 bars later is 2 again, and 1 bar later is 1. I want as much as possible of your song to reduce down to phrases that start with either 1 or 2. You might think that that's a really strange thing to do, but in fact, it really does relate to how jazz harmony typically is put together. And oh my gosh. So once again, once again I went black, right? So, yeah, and this is on a different computer. So now I know I don't blame the computer at all. I blame Lightstream. And that's okay. Hopefully you could still, hopefully I was describing what I was doing enough to hear that you could kind of tell what I was doing. And I'm sorry, I spent too long not looking at my phone, so I don't know how long I was out of commission. I would like to think it's back now. If you can hear me say I would like to think it's back now, can you verify if it's back now or not? Yeah, I think it's back now. Okay, because I see it now. Okay, so just to reiterate, I'm talking about 2-bar phrases here. 1, 2, and then the next phrase. 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 So I'm looking at this in terms of being a 2-measure journey from 1 back to 1, and then a 2-measure journey from 1 going on to 2, and then a 2-measure journey from 2 coming back to 2, and then a 1-measure journey from 2 back to 1. The goal here is to see as much of your song as you can in these terms, journeys between 1 and 2. That is the goal here. So it might require you to look at 4-bar phrases. It might require you to, probably most cases, it's actually going to require you to deal in 2-bar phrases, as I did here. So yes, you might see that you've got 4-bar phrases, but then cut them in half so that you can see the 2-bar phrases. And then occasionally, when you've got 2 chords per measure, like I do here, then you might need to see that as a 1-bar phrase. This is G going back to F. So I want to suggest that pretty much everyone's songs I can look at that way. So like this guy right here, oh, I want to go back to the simpler version of that harmonically. Yeah, this is the version. I could say this is 2-bar phrase. And then next 2-bar phrase. And then the next 2-bar phrase. And then the next 2-bar phrase. By looking at it that way, looking at it in terms of 4 2-bar phrases, and each of them is basically starting on F and leading back to F. And by leading back to F, I mean it literally did nothing. But what we're going to learn about, there's the lesson that's coming, you know, it's already there. I don't think anyone has actually been posting any stuff from it. But it's the lesson that I've labeled as a bonus lesson, because it definitely gets pretty deep. And it absolutely requires you to be looking at it the way I'm talking about. But the way I'm talking about will be useful for pretty much all of what you're doing here. And I need to stand to make this point here. I look at this journey as like, I'm home. I'm right here in front of the camera. There's my 1 chord. My 2-bar journey could consist of just sitting here on the 1 chord looking at the camera, Or it could consist of this. One chord, one chord. What did I do? Did I go on a trip? Did I pack my suitcase? Did I have to make a hotel reservation? No. I just got up off my chair, walked across the room, and came back. Usually I talk about this in terms of like walking out your front door, walking around the block, and coming back. It's not much of a trip, right? It's you're home, you walk around for a couple bars just to stretch your legs, and then you come back. That's what it is. It's that thing when you get out of your seat in an airplane, walk down the hall, even though you don't really need to go to the bathroom, just because you're tired of sitting in that seat, and then you come back. That's the kind of thing that this song is doing. And in this case, this version of the song is just sitting in your seat. What I'm going to be showing you is things of how to get up out of your seat and walk down the hall and come back. And so we're going to be seeing things like 1, 6, 2, 5. That's one of the versions. We'll also see 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 as another way of doing it. And let me try that differently. That's another one. These are all things, and you might be looking at, what are all those chords? They're all in the handout that goes with the other idioms lesson. And so a large part of what I'm talking about here is setting you up for success in those lessons. So by making sure you can structure this in a way where you've got these 2-bar phrases you see, you'll be happy. Like here, and then right now she has it as 4, coming back to 1. Well, I could still see that this is a 2-bar phrase. Starts on 1 and takes 2 bars to come back to 1. So I could just at that point skip the 4. I could just look at this. So here's the other thing about these journeys. These journeys are interchangeable. This is the thing I'm going to be showing you. And when I say interchangeable, it's an interesting thing, because in jazz we sometimes talk about substitutions, and we learn, this chord substitutes for that chord. What I'm going to be talking about is something a little different. And so I want to give you a bit of an analogy here. My analogy is, let's talk more about this idea of taking little trips. Let's say that I want to go to the grocery store. And there's a grocery store about a mile from my office here. And along the way, if I take one of the routes that I could possibly take to get to the grocery store from here, I will pass a Vietnamese restaurant along the way. If I take a different route to get to that same grocery store, I won't pass that Vietnamese restaurant. I will pass a dry cleaner. So the question is, does the Vietnamese restaurant substitute for the dry cleaner, or vice versa? Not in any meaningful sense, right? If I walked into that Vietnamese restaurant and handed them my tux and said, "Here, could you clean this?" They're gonna, think I'm crazy. And vice versa. If I went into the dry cleaner and tried to order a noodle bowl or some pho, it's they're gonna, what? That doesn't make any sense. They're just different places I pass along the way. It's really about getting to the grocery store. So I'm trying to get to the grocery store. This F chord is my grocery store. This B flat major is the dry cleaner that I could pass if I'm going one way. But bye-bye, I might take a different route to get to that grocery store this time. So I could try all those things that I just did. That's the same 1-6-2-5 that I did before, but also this one's not going to sound so good, but or how about the other one I tried? Ish. So I've got all these different routes that I know. And when I say I know them, I mean you're going to know them too. So if you haven't looked at it already, let me, I I think I've got it here. Common idioms. Here we go. So this is the handout you're going to be living in when you get to that lesson, assuming, so this lesson I take bonus because it is kind of advanced and it definitely requires a lot more thought than some. But this is why I'm trying to set up for success now. Because if you set up for success now, you're going to have a better chance of success when you try this lesson. So these are the things that I'm calling static progressions. They start at 1 and they come back to 1. And you'll see I've just got a whole list of them here. And then you try them. That was another one that I didn't try. Ooh, here's another one. Yeah, that's not too bad there. Yeah, I like that one. So there's a whole bunch of them here, and I'm transposing these. So if you're wondering, hey, I saw a C chord, you were playing an F chord, that's because I transposed it in my head. But the point is, these are plug and play. They're different routes to get to that grocery store. And no, they don't, this A flat chord is not substituting for that B flat chord. This E minor is not substituting for the B flat. The F major isn't substituting for the B flat. These chords are not substituting for each other any more than the dry cleaner substitutes for the Vietnamese restaurant. They're just different ways of getting to my goal. So, let's see, looking back, just see if I have any other questions, but no, nothing, just confirmation that my visuals are still good. Okay, so this idea that we want to get our 2 5s in particular places so that our 2s line up with beginnings of phrases so that we can do things like this. And so let me go back to Jingle Bells for a second. In Jingle Bells, I could have gotten myself into a little bit of trouble here. Let me undo whatever changes I've done so far. My original chord here was not G minor 7. It was still B flat. Because remember, we were supposed to start with literally just... What am I doing? Oh, wrong shortcut is what I'm doing. Because I've switched computers. Okay, so remember originally we just had 1, 4, and 5. And so these chords didn't exist either. It was all just C7. But I want to focus on these first 4 bars here. If you looked at this and saw, hey, I got a couple bars of 4, and then I've got a 5 chord, if you followed my suggestion that says, hey, when you see 4 followed by 5, replace the 4 with 2. You might have looked at it and tried to put your 2 chord up here rather than here. But what I'm saying is, no, actually putting the 2 chord at the beginning of that 4-bar phrase by putting my 2 chord there. This is what's going to open this song up to be some new possibilities. Because I got journeys. If you go to my handout there, which is too far away now. I've got these journeys in the handout here that talk about going from 1 to 2. I call them precadences. Ooh, and I didn't label what that means, but I described it elsewhere. These are different ways of getting from a 1 chord to a 2 chord. Oh, and by the way, since I am dealing with the key of F, I did actually suggest you could select this whole handout and just transpose it to F, and then, or whatever key your piece is in, to make it easier to kind of comprehend what's going on. So these are all little 2-measure phrases that will get you from 1 to 2. And again, if you have to zoom in and you're really only doing it in 1 bar, well then you just compress this. Or if you have to zoom out and it's going to take you 4 bars to get from 1 to 2, well then you double the length of everything. But the ratios stay the same. That's kind of the point here. So I've got all these different ways of getting from 1 to 2. And I want to be able to take advantage of that. So right here, if I look at this and say, hey, look, I've got a 1 chord here, and if I'm able to say, you know what, I want to take 2 bars to get to that 2 chord so I can try some of those fun things. That's one of the reasons to do this. That's one reason I want this 2 chord here on bar 5 at the start of the next logical phrase, not here in the middle of the phrase. I don't want my 2 chord there. Now, I'm not saying there can't be a 2 chord there, but I'm saying that that's not the journey I want to take. I want to take a journey to a 2 chord at the start of a phrase. That's what I'm looking for. I want to have these little journeys that feel comfortable. Going to the grocery store, that's something I do a lot. I don't want it to be, you know what, I'm not trying to go to the grocery store. I want to get to this spot 17 yards away from the stop sign on the corner of Frontage Road and County Road 3. I don't even know where that is. I don't want to have to calculate all this stuff like that. I just want to say I want to get to King Soopers. That's a grocery store around here, or Natural Grocers. So the point is we're looking to get familiar places, and 1 going to 2 and back to 1 is as familiar as it gets. When we talk about 2-5-1 being super important in jazz, it's because that's what songs do. They start on the 1, they wander around for a while, eventually they find themselves on the 2, and then they start on that 2, and eventually they find themselves back to 1. They might visit other places along the way, but that basic journey back and forth between 1 and 2 accounts for a ton of music. So I'm checking here and making sure. Okay, good. So looking at some of these other pieces, like Bleak Midwinter. I don't know this song. Gustav Holst. I know Gustav Holst, his music. Well, you know, the one piece everyone knows, The Planets. And Christina Rossetti is, I know of as a poet because I wrote some music to one of her poems called Goblin Market. And in one of the cafes, I believe one of the really early cafes called Scary Meters, I think, or something like that. It's it was like a Halloween special, and I talked about my 15/8 music that I wrote for a Christina Rossetti poem. So anyhow, that's my little connection to Christina Rossetti. Dark poem. But you know, hopeful but dark. I don't know the song, so I just want to hear. Okay, so what I hear is 1, and then this one I hear as 2, 5. That's what I hear. I hear this as 2 measures of the 1 chord, and then 2 to 5. I see it that way because I'm conditioned by now to see things in these little 2-bar phrases. So I see a 2-bar journey that starts 1, and then my next 2-bar phrase starts on 2, and then goes back to 1. So I see a 2-bar phrase that's 1 going to 2. In fact, let me just stick this in here for a second. This will be kind of fun. I'll just do this because I don't have my fancy template in here. Key of E flat. Come on. Here we go. Key of E flat, and then I have ba-da, ba-bum. I don't know what the original rhythm was, so just bear with me. And then quarter notes. Ba-da-dum, and then quarter notes. Ba-da-da-dum, bum. Now, what did I do wrong? Obviously a lot of things. So, da-da-da. I'm just trying to do all of this. Da-da-dum, and then quarter note. Ba-da-dum, quarter note. Ba-da-da-dum, whole note. bum. All right, so there's my 4-bar phrase, and I'm looking at this as being, not lyric, E flat for 2 bars, and then my 2/5, F minor 7, B flat 7, and then back to E flat. So, then 2. So, this fits my model really nicely. And then it allows me to try out all those different things on that Common Idioms handout here, all these different precadences, which are ways of getting from 1 to 2. And of course now I'm in F, but I want to be in E flat, so I'll transpose it to E flat. So, all of these different ways. Here's, I'm pointing at the screen, that doesn't work, right? I should know better than that by now. I'm going to try this one. And then I come to the F minor. Here's another one. Some different chords. It's what I call crunchy, this E flat against that C7. So maybe I don't use that one. Maybe I skip some of these other ones that have C7 at the end there. But let me try this one. Maybe. Let me try this one. Yeah, that's not too bad. Let me try it with better voicings. I'm thinking about this for a second, and then, yeah, I like that one a lot. This is a nice little choice there. So by getting the song to start off in this nice thing with these 2-bar phrases of journeys back and forth between 1 and 2, I can try all sorts of these options out. And then the second thing that happens is in that song, which I've now lost again. What's the name of that? In the Bleak? Ah, it's right here. Da-da-da-da-dum. Oh yeah, it's that. Da-da-da-da-dum. I have it as a 2/5. 2, 5, and then back to 1, right? Well, this 2/5, this is the lesson called cadences. It's a very it's the most common type of idiom that we learn how to find alternatives for. I've got a whole section on different cadences, and there's the one that we started with. But what if I use this one instead? F7. Yeah, that one works. How about if I try this one? Don't mind the transposition calls this F flat 7, but maybe I call it E7. Maybe. Let me try this one. Yeah, not too bad. Let me try this one. Maybe. I try this one. And so on. Once you can look at your piece in these like broad terms that have familiar signposts in them, then we can try these familiar chord progressions. And I say familiar because they're all familiar to me. They're familiar to me from my experience as a jazz musician. But the point is, you don't have to have as the experience that I have. You just need to have this handout, and then you can make use of it. So this is what I would encourage you to really make sure as you're going forward that you really see this breakdown into phrases and have lined things up where possible so that you have your 1s and 2s in the right place. Peter's got a question here about measures 17 and 18 of Silent Night. Yeah, so let me bring up your 17 and 18 and see. So Silent Night, I'm going to go with this 4/4 version. Is this you, or is it, because I think a couple of people are doing Silent Night. Oh, there's your name, so good. So 17 and 18, is this the right version? Da? So already, just doing the math, I know 17 starts a phrase, right? If it's 4-bar phrases, the phrases start on 1. Well, it's 1 to 8, 1 to 4 is a 4-bar phrase, then 5 to 8, then 9 to 12, 13 to 16, 17 to 20, I guess. It's not like I have all those numbers memorized, but I can do math, and I know 16 is a power of 2, and 17 is the next number after it. That's what we're looking for. So here, I would assume a 2-5 is going to be great. 2, 5, 1. That's going to be my no-brainer starting point here. 2, 5. 2, 5. Now, you would start off in your original version as 5 to 1, right? You're going to start, if your only chords that you're going to have are 1s, 4s, and 5s, that's a 5. And it has to be, it doesn't have to be a 5, but the 1 chord doesn't really fit that note C, nor does the 4 chord. It sort of does, it's the 6th of it, but we'll eventually realize the 2 is a better fit. But the 5 chord, it fits the 5 chord, right? 2, 5 to 1. So your first cut at this should have had, and I think it did, have a 5 chord here at 5 to 1. But then your breakdown of it is going to put the 2 chord right there, so you'll have 2, 5, 1. And so then that will enable you to then say, hey, what other ways of getting from 2 back to 1 are there? And you can use that whole Cadences handout. And then here you're also going to have 1 and then 2. So you'll have 2 bars later, you'll have your 2 chord. And you'll get to play with all those different ways that I line out of getting from 1 and then 2 bars later to 2. And then 2 bars later to 1. Yes, you're originally going to start off with a 5 chord in there, and a lot of the things that we do are going to pass by that same Vietnamese restaurant, that same 5 chord, but they might have other stuff in between. So this is this is the kind of stuff I want to be showing you. There's actually one other example I want to show relative to this, and that's the piece that Heis has been working on. That's kind of interesting because it's its own little variation on this. So now we're in C. So there's our 4-bar phrase, right? Now, there is no getting around the fact that on this song, look at that melody. That's the 2 chord. There's no way for me not to hear a 2 chord in the second bar. So yes, I could look at this and say, hey, look at that. I zoom in really close now, and it took me only 1 measure to get from 1 to 2. And yeah, I could look at that as being one of those precadences there that's only 1 measure long. It just took 1 measure. Is one of my choices, and I would like that one. Yes, you could look at that as being a journey from 1 to 2, but then this is a little weird. If we look at this and say, oh, 2 back to 1, well, it took 2 measures, but see how they're kind of like straddling, right? It's not like first 2 measures of the line being one phrase, second 2 measures of the line being the next phrase. This is like asking me to consider the middle 2 measures of the line as a phrase. So you could do it, and it might work. And when I say work, I mean, this is the right chords, right? This is absolutely the original chords, or more or less. Yeah, those are the obvious chords there. Nothing wrong with that. But if we're trying to do this whole jazz reharmonization thing, we might do a little surgery. And the little surgery that I would do is say, you know what, I really want long time ago in Bethlehem. There's my first line. And then, so the Holy Bible say. I want to take that measure 3 and make this be a 2 and then a 5. So that this is my phrase starting with a 2 chord. So now, if I want, I can still have my 2 chord in the second measure. I just want to come back to a 2 chord in the third measure so that I can have my 2-5 kind of in the right ratio. The right ratio meaning they're the same length if I just look at this measure, and they're sitting where I need them to sit, not straddling 2 phrases, but taking up a phrase all by themselves. So this getting a sense of this and what kind and this song is the only one that came up I think where this particular thing happened. But yeah, everyone's songs might have some version of this where you have to figure things out. So by all means, be posting, be asking questions, be helping each other out. Those of you who already do have any sort of feel for this, go ahead and comment. But we'll make a place where maybe people can like specifically get help with this if you need it. I'll make maybe a particular post for that later if it feels like that's helpful. All right, so I want to wrap up what we're doing here, and I mentioned that I want to try something new. So those of you who can stick around for a few more moments, here's what I want you to do. At the top of the chat, I've posted the link to the community. Most of you here are already in the community because a lot of you are on the holiday course, and that would automatically have you there. If you're not already logged into the community, do so. If you haven't created an account, maybe try to do so really fast, but maybe, maybe we'll catch you next time. But I want you to go to the community and then look at the top of the screen. So when I say the top of the screen, I'm going to go to the community here, and I want you to look up here. I'm not sure where it's going to appear, but somewhere, like for me, you see I have got this button that says Go Live. I don't think you're going to have that button, but you might have one that says Mark is live now, or I don't know what exactly it's going to say. And maybe it won't be there, maybe it'll be somewhere else, but somewhere towards the top you're going to see something that says that I'm live, and then I want you to click it. Okay, so I'm going to cut off what we're doing here, and I want you to go to the community, and within the next minute or so expect to see that, and then if all goes well, I'm going to see you over there. So let me just quickly play out my music because, I got to be me and do that. So I will play this. Thanks everyone for being here. This is still just so much fun for me to be doing this, and this next thing that we're going to try, doing this live thing in the community, I don't know. You'll see what it can do, those of you who join me over there, and then we can decide if it works as well, if it works better, if it works differently, and I need to do different things for it, but we're going to find out shortly. So next week is Thanksgiving in the United States next Thursday, so I'm not going to do the music masterclass on Thursday, but I'm going to do something else special. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be, but maybe mark your calendars for Tuesday the same time. That's when I usually do my office hours, and I think what I'm going to do is some sort of combined office hours / masterclass thing on Tuesday. Stay tuned for more information about that. And those of you who want to and can, come join me in the community. Hopefully you will see this banner show up within the next